our evaluators pointers of what they enjoyed, what they have improve. The first evaluator is audio is Mark Johnson. Mark, would you please come forward and give us an evaluation, please? And then I have on the lectern who is next, and you can just follow the order. The order would it be Krista? Yeah, it's on. Okay. So Mark Johnson.
Thank you very much. Wow, that was great. That was the best speech that I've heard, Debra, since I've known her. It had great content. The audio at first was capturing, and it worked well with the humor, and it just flowed through the whole speech. So I thought the audio was variable. It had great pauses in it at the right times. It was emphasized at the right points, especially on like the file cabinets, and this and that. It was done quite well. The only thing that I saw was a little hesitation, probably 3/4 of the way through the speech. It kind of slowed down a little bit, then it got picked back up. So overall, it was a great and informative speech. Next up is Krista.
I was a visual evaluator. I was concentrating on how she looked and trying not to pay attention to the voice and what she was saying as much. I tried to concentrate on the gestures she used and when she used them, how effective they were. Right away, the beginning of her speech, she talked about hindsight. The first thing she did was point back. She used a lot of eye contact and gestures overall. OCD, I noticed she OCD. Though I noticed from the very beginning she was holding a little piece of paper, and I thought, what in the world is that? Does she have notes on that little piece of paper and she's going to look at it? It was interesting at the end to see that it was your horoscope to read. I think you did fiddle with it a lot, but not too bad. When you said file cabinet, you used your hands to show maybe shape and size. But I noticed when you used the most gestures was when you were talking about the garden, the looking out west, the overgrown shrubs. It's probably the part you were most excited about, I'm guessing. When you would talk about one or first, you would usually use your hands to show first or one. Around, you use your hand to show that, and liberating. As far as anything that's not visual, I don't know if there was the best part for the visual. I did think the speech overall was inspiring, and we've accumulated a lot of things over the years and can't figure out what to get rid of, so you can have us all that. Oh, the next one, Jim Briggs will be evaluating the content.
Fellow Toastmasters, Debra, if you could pare that down to 7 minutes, I'd like to see that speech in competition next year for the international competition. I think it would go a long ways. Excellent. I loved it. The organization was something that we could all emulate. She picked out 3 things and kept it simple and kept coming back to them. She referred to those 3 the 3 things to think about several times and then finished up reiterating them. And the most important thing was she showed how this, if you implemented her plan, it would affect your life as an audience member. Just quickly break it down. She took things that we all think about, our career. Everybody in this room has thought back, gee, if I had taken a different path at such a where would I be? I got the feeling she wasn't too happy in her job. So she enriched her life other ways. Andy Strepnitsky is famous for being a bird person, not an orchardist, which is how he makes his living. I think this is what you were getting at. If you're not happy there, keep going and you'll find something that will keep you home. Who cannot argue with less is more? Garden, I hate gardening, but I know a lot of people like it, and she seems to have worked out a way to have a successful garden. And I agree, as a former agricultural agent, planning is the key. Excellent. I really love the way you wrapped it all up and packaged it for how we could use it. Madam Toastmaster. Oh, John. Oh my gosh,
Thank you, thank you, thank you. The aim of this particular speech was to uplift the spirit, and this manual says, ask the audience, will their spirit uplifted? I see heads nodding. That's a good sign. It was interesting that the title you chose, if I only knew then what I know now. And the question came to my mind, how well did you use the title within your speech? And I think you beat around the bush, but really didn't get to it as effectively as you might. And so that might be something to consider, is a different title, or rearranging your speech a bit to fit that title a little better. Now, because that title is part of that introduction, which gets that audience ready for the speech. That's one of the things we have to think about. And so that might be something you want to think about in future speeches, is how does this title fit? Do I need to modify it a little bit? One of the things I thought you did well was to add humor. For instance, you started by looking behind you over each shoulder to introduce the fact of looking back at your life. And I thought it was appropriate for you to not allow me to answer your question, because I probably would have tried to do forethought would be even better than hindsight. So that was good not to make sure I didn't answer that question. One of the things you brought out, as was talked about, 3 different aspects. And one of the things you talked about over and over is less is more, and you might have modified that a little bit. Less is more space. Less is more time. Or less is more opportunity. Or some feature like that, to have that same base phrase, but add to what it actually produces. So sometimes you want a base phrase and then a modifier. And that may provide an opportunity for enriching us even further as far as thinking about what you're saying. When you said about 8 file cabinets, I thought cabinets as in this tall and this deep, or file drawers, which are smaller. And your indication seems to be file drawers more than file cabinets. And I have a file cabinet with 4 drawers, legal size drawers, full of stuff. And I couldn't imagine having 8 cabinets that big. Used gestures well and implemented them throughout your speech in adding to the humor, which I have trouble doing. I have trouble adding humor to my speech. I tend to be very straight and narrow in a box, unless I am out in the wild. That is, wild of humankind, not necessarily in the forests, because I have a warped mind at times. But I thought you did a wonderful job in presenting things for us to think about. Because when you were talking, I thought, how much have I done that well, and how much have I And I'd say my irrigation system I planned well, because I planned for that 14 gallons a minute. I know that would get off my irrigation. So I did that one well. Now as far as paperwork, oh, I need to do a lot more work. So you gave each of us something to think about in our own lives, how we could improve. And still, Toastmaster.
My spirit was uplifted, and I do have to plant new plants next year, and so I will be planning with the water source in mind on that. I would like to take a 5-minute break.